An introduction to film sound. Though we might think of film as an essentially visual experience, we really cannot afford to underestimate the importance of film sound. A meaningful soundtrack is often as complicated as the image on the screen, and is ultimately just as much the responsibility of the director. The entire soundtrack consists of three essential ingredients: the human voice, sound effects, and music. These three tracks must be mixed and balanced so as to produce the necessary emphases, which in turn create desired effects. Topics which essentially refer to the three previously mentioned tracks are discussed below. They include dialogue, synchronous and asynchronous sound effects, and music. Let us start with dialogue. As is the case with stage drama, dialogue serves to tell the story and expresses feelings and motivations of characters as well. Often with film, characterization, the audience perceives little or no difference between the character and the actor. Thus, for example, the actor Humphrey Bogart is the character Sam Spade. Film personality and life personality seem to merge. Perhaps this is because the very texture of a performer's voice supplies an element of character. When voice textures fit the performer's physiognomy and gestures, a whole and very realistic persona emerges. The viewer sees not an actor working at his craft, but another human being struggling with life. It is interesting to note that how dialogue is used and the very amount of dialogue used varies widely among films. For example, in the highly successful science fiction film 2001, little dialogue was evident, and most of it was banal and of little intrinsic interest. In this way, the filmmaker was able to portray what Thomas Sobchak and Vivian Sobchak call, in An Introduction to Film, the inadequacy of human responses when compared with the magnificent technology created by man and the visual beauties of the universe. The comedy Bringing Up Baby, on the other hand, presents practically non-stop dialogue delivered at breakneck speed. This use of dialogue underscores not only the dizzy quality of the character played by Katharine Hepburn, but also the absurdity of the film itself, and thus its humor. The audience is bounced from gag to gag and conversation to conversation. There is no time for audience reflection. The audience is caught up in a whirlwind of activity in simply managing to follow the plot. This film presents pure escapism, largely due to its frenetic dialogue. Synchronous sound effects are those sounds which are synchronized or matched with what is viewed. For example, if the film portrays a character playing the piano, the sounds of the piano are projected. Synchronous sounds contribute to the realism of film and also help to create a particular atmosphere. For example, the click of a door being opened may simply serve to convince the audience that the image portrayed is real, and the audience may only subconsciously note the expected sound. However, if the click of an opening door is part of an ominous action, such as a burglary, the sound mixer may call attention to the click with an increase in volume. This helps to engage the audience in a moment of suspense. Asynchronous sound effects, on the other hand, are not matched with a visible source of the sound on screen. Such sounds are included so as to provide an appropriate emotional nuance, and they may also add to the realism of the film. For example, a filmmaker might opt to include the background sound of an ambulance's siren while the foreground sound and image portrays an arguing couple. The asynchronous ambulance siren underscores the psychic injury incurred in the argument. At the same time, the noise of the siren adds to the realism of the film by acknowledging the film's city setting. We are probably all familiar with background music in films, which has become so ubiquitous as to be noticeable in its absence. We are aware that it is used to add emotion and rhythm. Usually not meant to be noticeable, it often provides a tone or an emotional attitude toward the story and/or the characters depicted. In addition, background music often foreshadows a change in mood. For example, dissonant music may be used in film to indicate an approaching, but not yet visible, menace. Background music may aid viewer understanding by linking scenes. For example, a particular musical theme associated with an individual character or situation may be repeated at various points in a film in order to remind the audience of salient motifs or ideas. Film sound comprises conventions and innovations. We have come to expect an acceleration of music during car chases and creaky doors in horror films, yet it is important to note as well that sound is often brilliantly conceived. The effects of sound are often largely subtle and often unnoted by only our subconscious minds. We need to foster an awareness of film sound, as well as film space, so as to truly appreciate an art form that sprang to life during the 20th century, the modern film.